Season 5 of Project Freelance begins right now. What is up? Welcome. Happy Monday morning. I know I took a whole week off and now I've come back with some energy. So I wanted to take a week off just so I could get some new guests lined up for you guys, get some new artwork done for the season 5 of Project Freelance. I took some photos in Lower Grand, which is where I took the photos that I've used in the last promos. So I wanted to just keep that trend kind of going, keep the branding on point. So I went to Lower Grand, set up my tripod and my camera, took a couple photos, and now we have art for the Project Freelance podcast. It's great. It's super simple to do, you guys. You don't need to hire somebody to do it. You could just set your tripod up, put on a self-timer, set the focus, take that photo. It's super simple. So yeah, if you guys like the new Project Freelance photo, you're welcome. I took it myself. Did a great job. It's great. Thank you. I know. So, thank you. Thank you so much for tuning back into another season of Project Freelance. It means a lot to me. I can't believe we are in season 5. I can't believe we've got over 60 episodes out. I can't believe we've talked to so many people. I cannot believe we've talked to so many people. I've talked to people that I've only dreamed of talking to. That being said, if you happen to be a freelance rocket engineer, aerospace engineer, or rocket design artist, something, if you freelance in aerospace or any of that stuff, and you happen to know Elon Musk, could you please have somebody on his team reach out to me? Actually, first of all, could you reach out to me? I want to know what you do. That is freelance aerospace. That sounds like an awesome time. Actually, I'm going to be talking to somebody that kind of does contract work for NASA. So I guess technically we will be talking to somebody that could potentially know Elon Musk. I'll keep you guys up to date on this. But if anybody knows Elon Musk, I'm dying to do a little video series with him, and I'm gonna make it happen. I have 6 months to meet the guy. I have a goal. It's on my goals list, so I'm gonna meet Elon Musk this year. I just want everybody to know that. I just need everybody to realize that it's gonna happen. We're gonna do this awesome video series together, and it's gonna be absolutely amazing. We may not film the video series this year, but we are going to film it. I am telling you. I have faith. I believe in manifestation. So here, for all of you to publicly hear, I'm gonna film a video series with Elon Musk. It's gonna happen, okay? It's gonna happen. Just mark my words. Okay, so, or a video. Any video would be great. I'd do any video with him. I would do this podcast with the guy, whatever, So I wanted to let you guys know that this week on the podcast, we are joined by Brian Cox. And Brian, I gotta tell you guys, okay, I shot a wedding with this guy, with our friend Kevin, who kind of connected us. Thank you, Kevin. You the man. You already know that, but you the man. So, we shot a wedding together. We hit it off. And when I started this podcast, I knew that I wanted to have Brian on, but it was a matter of when I was going to ask him and where he was at in his career and what he was doing. And right now, I think is the perfect time to talk to him because this guy just got done shooting for Hollywood Undead. He did 4 world tours with them, shooting lifestyle content and shooting video content for them. He did daily videos of show recaps. He also did a weekly YouTube series video for Hollywood Undead. So he was constantly grinding, constantly busting his ass, and it was the first time he was on tour. So he had a little bit of a learning curve, but super cool content, super awesome content, and I'm a huge fan of Hollywood Undead, so I wanted to talk about that in this podcast. Not only that, he is currently working for a little tiny band called Bring Me the Horizon. Okay, if you don't know this band, let me lift the rock off of your body that you're living under. And Patrick Star lived under a rock, so I feel like I'm lifting his house. You know how his house lifted up in SpongeBob? His house, the rock, it just kind of lifted itself like a fucking, like a what is that called on your car? The thing, the hood of your car. Oh my God, I'm stupid. It's so early in the morning right now. So yeah, I would like to lift that rock off of you and let you know about this band called Bring Me the Horizon that you should know about. I have listened to this band since their first album, since they had low light and lots of editing scribbles and vampire teeth and monster teeth drawn on their faces in their music videos. I love Bring Me the Horizon. I've watched this band grow from being bottled on stage to where they are now playing massive arenas and festivals. This band, you guys, is the Slipknot of my generation. I swear to you, they are going to go down in fucking history as one of the greatest bands that has ever existed. And for the scene, this band has represented the scene like it's nobody's business. Thank you, Bring Me the Horizon, for being such a good, positive representation of the scene. And not only that, but like the stories that these guys have gone through, like Ollie Sykes has been through a lot of shit, which you can definitely tell in his music. But I can't thank this band enough for the content they've made. Not that they're going to listen to this podcast. Like, they don't have time to listen to this podcast. They're busy. But if they should happen to listen to this podcast, you guys know I love you. Thank you for bringing Brian out with you. I think you guys made an absolutely amazing decision by bringing him out and letting him use his creative skills to create you guys some of the greatest video content out there. So without further ado, I'm just going to jump right into this podcast. Thank you guys. At the very end of this podcast, by the way, if you do like what you hear, please be sure to give it a rating of 5 stars and leave a review. Let people know what you liked about the podcast. Also, I do apologize for the ambient noise on Brian's end. He was walking around town, so there's a little bit of wind and a little bit of background noise, but I mean, still a great podcast nonetheless, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Brian, do me a favor. Tell the people who you are and what you're all about.
I'm Brian Cox. I am a videographer. I've been doing videography for about 15 years. Now, currently the content creator for Bring Me the Horizon, and I tour around the world.
So Brian and I, for those listening, we shot a wedding together, and yeah, it was, we got to talking there, and that's kind of how we connected through a mutual friend who also does videography. So talk about how you got into videography in the first place. What inspired you to get started in it?
What inspired me initially was when I was around 15, I actually starred in a music video, in my brother's music video, and it was shot at Universal Studios. And, full crew, big budget kind of production. And that day, my attention kind of went away from acting on set to, wow, what are these guys doing? And just watching the director. And it was that day that kind of changed things for me. Ever since then, I've had a passion for film, picked up a camera shortly after that and just been chasing it ever since.
Wow. So have you had any formal training? Like, did you go to school for film or anything, or are you self-taught?
I am, for the most part, self-taught. But in the beginning, I had a lot of help from my high school teacher, Mr. Riali, from Monrovia High School in California. And he showed me the ropes quite a bit, along with a public access TV station based in Monrovia. They allowed me to have my own live TV show in the late 90s. So I had my own live public access show called What's Up, and we just discussed what was up that week. I mean, it was pretty it was fun. But I was a teenager in high school, and I'd get my friends on there, and we just would talk about things. And I would steal music videos off MTV with my VCR, and I would rip them off like TRL, and then I would play them on my own show and have my own music video countdown, which is another thing that kind of led me into wanting to direct music videos, was because I was so immersed in them, at an early age, just watching them constantly. So yeah, for the most part though, self-taught, no college, university, nothing like that. YouTube University.
Yeah, YouTube University, definitely. I think that's a very popular university for people to go to, seeing as it's free.
It's cheap, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think like anything in this industry that you want to do, if you put your mind to it, you can do it, honestly. I mean, it sounds easier said than done, but the point is that it can be done,
So tell me about shooting your first music video. What was that process like?
Oh man, I gotta think back. First music video was a lot of fun. I had to borrow a camcorder from a friend. we just used lights in the house, like lamps, things like that. I guess it was just kind of creating things on the spot, just with a bunch of friends. And that to me was just exciting in itself. There wasn't any pressure of like, I didn't even know any different at that time, pressure from like a label or management or anything like that. It was just creating something visual for a song. But at the time I didn't even have any gear. I literally just had an idea and wanted to do it. And I knew how to shoot somewhat, and I knew how to edit somewhat just from high school. So, I then took that knowledge and was like, I need to find a camera so I can shoot. I didn't have one of my own because I couldn't afford one. But I didn't let that get in the way. I just made some friends and, used them for their cameras. No, I'm kidding. But no, I had some good friends, with me that, were down for it, and, they helped as well. And, so that was actually, man, that was a long time ago. That was like 2005 was my first little video.
How has your budget changed since then? Or your your rate, things like that. Like how has that developed and evolved over time, especially with somebody that you didn't necessarily go to school for this, so like you didn't have anybody tell you like, oh, so the industry standard. Nobody told me, and I went to film school. No one told me what the industry standard rate was. I just had to figure it out. So how did you go about figuring out your rates?
It was a lot of, I guess it's a lot of doing like free gigs and gigs where you're underpaid, in a sense, kind of help you find what your rate should be. Like if you're doing a gig and you feel like you're underpaid, it's probably because you are. So I did so many that way, and then it's just a matter of like, for me personally, I did a lot of research, on the internet, finding, digging through blogs and things like that, what a cinematographer would get paid or what an editor would get paid. And, that information actually is pretty hard to find because people try and keep their rates, to them. But at the same time, it's like, I think my value changed once I started building relationships with bands. I'm mostly, I'm like 100% only doing video for music now, which is pretty incredible. But that didn't really start making money until I had built relationships with bands, because that in itself has value, more so than just being able to pick up a camera or knowing, you could be the best editor in the world, but you could be the worst person to tour with, so no one's going to pay you, for your time if you're, impossible to be around in that sense. So I think like, it's kind of like a bigger picture rather than just like, being better at your craft. There's, I think like how you approach a gig and like how you maintain like a relationship with someone is important too.
So when it comes to building those relationships, like how did you get in touch with, first of all, I know you did stuff with like The Fever for a second, and then you did Hollywood Undead, and now you're with Bring Me. How did you build those relationships on your way?
A lot of free videos, a lot of, a lot of hangout time on the side as well. Like, I think like it's, so there's something that I was always told, coming up, like networking is such a big deal, and you need to get out there and network and like meet people. And one thing that I learned in doing that is, it almost seems like networking means showing off your work and like, hey, pushing your work onto people and showing them what you do. But really, I think networking is more about building friendships. Like I've noticed that anyone that I've pushed my work onto when I first met them, none of them to this day have given work. It's always, it almost comes across, desperate, I guess, and I did that a lot. I did it a ton, and I learned the hard way, because I'd meet some of my favorite bands, and in that first time meeting them, I would, hey, check out my videos. Hey, let me send you a link. Let me, push an email to you. Let me blow up your Instagram. Like, you know what I mean? And none of that gets you anywhere. And I've learned that just being cool, making friends with people first and foremost, and with no, expectations to come from it. Those networking, those people I've networked with have lent work, over and over again. So,
I think it's super important. I talk about all the time on here, building relationships. And I think people often forget, like, there are 8,000 videographers pitching themselves to this same band every single day. So you have to do something that's going to make you stand out from them. And the only thing you really have to do is just be yourself.
Exactly. I think being yourself is key. It's like, it's interesting because, I wish someone told me that a long time ago, but it's not the case. There's plenty of times when I was younger, I'd meet a band and I would just, act a certain way. And I don't even know why. It just would kind of happen. And then, just trying to like punish them with showing them my work. And at the end of the day, they don't really care to see your work. They're kind of like, they either just got off stage, they're about to do a show, they got other things on their mind. Like, so it's like those times that I've just been chill and just been there as just like a friend or whatever is always, with more benefit, I guess.
Yeah, especially when you're going to be touring with these people. You're going to be spending a lot of time with them. They need to know who you are, how you are, and your personality. And the only way they can do that is by actually talking to you one-on-one as a friend, building that friend relationship. And so when you started doing stuff for Hollywood Undead, talk a little bit about that and what that experience was like. I'm a huge HU fan. I always have been. So to get to see somebody I know, like, doing their shit and like making their content was super, super fun for me to watch. How does your unique style come into creating content for bands?
Well, with Hollywood Undead, that actually kind of came out of left field, to be honest with you. And there's actually an interesting story with this. Like, when I was in high school, I used to back to what I was saying earlier about like punishing bands and sending them your stuff. When I was in high school, I used to send them stuff on MySpace and just message after message after message. Hey, I want to do a video for you. I'll do it for free. Like, just anything I could to try and get their attention. And they never once responded. Never once. I don't even know if they've even read anything. And fast forward 10 years, I've carried on kind of doing my own thing, shooting weddings, shooting, whatever I could get my hands on. And I'm having a lunch meeting with a good friend of mine. And I was about to give up. I was actually like, man, I've been doing this for 10 years. It's not really making that much money. I don't really know what else to do. I'm going to be 30 soon. All these things were kind of hitting me at once. And I was like, I just wish I could meet a band that would like give me a shot. And he goes, I should introduce you to a friend of mine. He's a musician and he knows a lot of people. And I was like, well, whatever. I'm down to meet people. So we meet Jarrell, who's J-Dog from Hollywood Undead. And it was funny because the friend of mine didn't really look at J-Dog as like some big musician because, yeah, he's been friends with him before even the band existed. So he sees him on a different level, and so, I met him and I was just like, this is so weird how the universe kind of like made this full circle thing come into play, like out of nowhere. And, I met him that day, or not, it wasn't that day, it was probably a week later. We talked about doing a video. I actually told him that story, and he thought it was pretty interesting that 10 years later, I'm still pushing to do music videos, knowing that there isn't much money in it, but just because I had a love for it. So he gave me the opportunity to do a video for Usual Suspects off their Day of the Dead album. And so I threw a GoPro on my head. I ran around Hollywood, made all these scenes with friends of mine, literally shot the whole video on a GoPro. And ended up at one of their shows at the Troubadour in Hollywood and shot that. As the whole thing is like first person perspective, like, a crazy fan having the night of his life, getting a Hollywood Undead tattoo, ending up at a show, getting drunk, everything that their typical fans do. And getting in a fist fight in an alley afterwards. And I handed the video in. I got a call from them literally like 2 hours later. The whole band called me on speakerphone, and they were just blown away. They loved it. They released the video a month later through Interscope. And then that was my first, I guess, big video, so to speak, that I had fully directed, produced, and shot. I'd already dabbled in other videos where, I edited something or shot something, but nothing like I could really fully put my name on as like a legit big video, or like, with wide reach video, I guess. So once that video happened, we did another video called Gravity. That was my first big budget video. And it was, kind of a dream come true at that time. So after that video happened, I just became really good friends with them. We all were hanging out and stuff, and it wasn't much, too long after that when they asked me to go on tour with them, and I'd never toured before. I already knew somewhat what touring was just through, my brother's eyes, I guess, but I'd never really fully experienced it on my own. And so that was another weird left field thing that I didn't see coming. I never dreamed of like, I want to go on tour with bands and film them. That never was like a goal. It was I want to direct music videos. So then when touring kind of came into play, it's like I learned this whole new way of applying, videography to music. Not just doing one music video, but I'm essentially doing a music video every day at every show, so, I just fell in love with this right away. And yeah, so with Hollywood Undead, those guys gave me really my big like foot in the door, and, I'm forever grateful of them. And, the guys are always going to be my brothers. Since then I've just moved on to do some other bands, and that's kind of where we're at now.
Wow, what a crazy like manifestation that you didn't even realize was a manifestation, 10 years ago, and it finally came back around. Like next week on the podcast, I have this guy named Kyle Hewlett who does digital marketing, and same kind of thing with him, like it took him like about 10 years, about the same amount of time, and then stuff started coming back around to him. So I think that it's super, super important to manifest things that you want to go for. And I mean, congratulations. That's huge to get to work with a band that you were so jazzed about back in the day.
Yeah. And it's like, I'd never even, the other thing I was manifesting was like, I want to travel, see the world, but how am I going to see the world? I don't know how I'm going to make this happen, but I'm going to make it happen one day. And it's like meeting Hollywood Undead, opened the door to both of those things, not only a new kind of updated career path, but also going around the world. I went around the world with them like 4 times now, been to Russia and all these different crazy places that I never would have imagined, so, it's very true, to kind of put things in the air and things can come back full circle if you're, positive about it.
So let's go into like cinematic style. Like when it came to making these videos for Hollywood Undead, did they have like a specific idea in mind of like, this is what we want every day? Or were you just kind of left to kind of come up with the concept and the idea of the videos every day?
I was kind of left to come up with things. We were in a very interesting position because when I was jumping in with them, they had never had a content person ever on the road with them. It was a new world for them as well. They were just told, you need to have someone on the road. Someone needs to come out because Instagram's blowing up, social media is blowing up. Like, it's needed. Any big band today needs it. And so, the only reason that I was kind of the first one they called is because of that friendship I already had with them. It wasn't because like I said, I had never toured. I had no experience touring. I had zero experience making content on a daily basis. None of that. But because I was already friends with them, it was an easier decision. They knew that I had the talent and that I could figure it out based off of, the fact that we were friends already and that we'd already done some music videos. But so once I was on the road with them, I kind of was figuring it out as we went. I was like, okay, well, the only directive I had was we need photos and we need video. And they wanted photos every day, which was another challenge because I never saw myself as a photographer. Yeah, so I'm like, all right, I'm going to learn photo. I'm gonna just make it happen. And I wouldn't even say I'm like the stellar photographer today, but oh my God, they were horrendous on those first shows. Oh wow, I had like 2,700 photos on my first show in Orlando. I will never forget it. I had 2,700 photos,
oh my
and
God.
only like 3 of them turned out.
Somebody got trigger happy and super anxious. I see.
Yeah, I think a hurricane is coming into London
right now.
Yeah, like literally a hurricane is coming in because the wind is insane. Hold on a second.
Yeah, you're good.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, cool.
Are you like hiding behind a structure now? Are you like hiding somewhere?
Yeah, I'm definitely hiding under this little hut, but I'm making sure that I can finish this chat with Project Freelance because it's very important to me, even during a hurricane.
Thank you. Thank you.
So yeah, I was doing photos, and then the video stuff. I just started making clips, and just kind of figured it out as I went and did what I thought looked cool, and I kind of put myself in a fan's shoes. Like, okay, if I'm going to go on Hollywood Undead's Instagram, what would I like to see? Oh, wow, there's a video of them backstage. Oh my God, I want to see what they're like backstage. So I would just, throw little teasers of what they're like. I wouldn't show like a whole conversation. I would just show little bits of it just to get people excited, and like, obviously, showing parts of the show is important, things like that. But, we ended up developing a YouTube series where I was doing weekly episodes on their tour. And so, it was similar to what, I think you had done some of this stuff too, haven't you, for like Warped Tour?
Yeah.
Just kind of like recaps of like what the days have been like and whatnot, interviewing fans and all that stuff. So it's not like I was inventing anything new. I just was, I literally brought that to the table for the band. They were like, okay, that sounds cool. Let's do it. So I just started doing it. So yeah, that's kind of how that happened. And honestly, I'd say my style, so to speak, developed by working with them. Working with them for so long and having the creative freedom allowed me to find my style and find the things that I like and the way that I edit and the way that I shoot and things like that. So this is the first time I've worked with a band where I was able to have the creative freedom to do my own thing. And it really helped me develop my style in that sense because, I didn't have anyone really telling me what they wanted. I just had, people in my corner telling me what they thought looked cool. So, I would cut videos and sure, there's been plenty of videos I've done for Hollywood Undead that I would turn them in and they're like, no, this isn't going to work, or this doesn't fit our style or our vibe. So I'd go back to the drawing board and redo stuff. But for the most part, they allowed me to have that freedom, which I think is really important for any artist to find their style. Once I've found my style and figured out kind of my own editing techniques, I guess, that kind of I really think, like, if I'm going to look at my videos objectively, I would say the editing is probably what really creates the look, I guess. And I think that just comes from practice, really. And again, just doing it every day. I was on the road with one band the whole time, so it allowed me to like really hone in and focus on my style and kind of create what I thought looked cool.
So how is your time management? I mean, you've got to film all this stuff, you've got to do a daily video for Instagram, and then you're compiling to do a weekly YouTube video. How did you manage your time during all of this? Like, did you sleep? Like, how did you do this? How did you function?
It's tough. There's nights where you're up till 5 or 6 in the morning, and then you're up again at 9 a.m. Editing photos and whatnot. So it's like, it's tough. That's really how my love for coffee developed. But it's funny because coffee really doesn't work so much anymore. But yeah, it's like, I guess for time management, organization is really it. There's nothing worse than having to dig back through files to find something that someone wants on the spot. Because there's times that'll happen where a label or someone in the band will be like, hey, remember, that day in Philadelphia where this and this happened, can you send me that? Or, do you have photos from when so-and-so came to the show, and it's like, if you don't have all that stuff organized in a way that you can find things in a quick way, then you're going to get lost very fast. So I think the organization's key.
Do you have like a typical file format, just out of curiosity? Do you label things like the date, the city, the venue? Like, how do you go about like labeling your stuff?
Sorry, I'm trying to find a quieter street, so it's going to be loud for a second.
No worries.
So I always put the date first, and then I put the date, and then I put the city right after the date. City or venue, I guess it kind of is one or the other depending on the show. And then inside that folder, I put, camera folders. So there might be a GoPro on stage. There might be, my Sony, which is on a Ronin. It's usually a gimbal camera. So that'll be its own folder. Then I have a handheld Blackmagic Ursa Pro, Mini Pro that I don't use every show, but on the bigger shows I'll use it. So that'll get its own folder. And then photos get its own folder. And then inside of the photos folder, I'll have selects folder. So it'll be, the photos that I think are worth editing. Now, my photo management, I wouldn't say is any good example. I've seen photographers and their management. I'm like, whoa, that looks way better than mine. Again, going back to my original point, never really been a photographer. So we'll just scratch that one off of the way of doing things. But yeah, for video organization, it's really just, folders on folders on folders, really. And I think it's important to... This is something I literally have been developing even as recent as being with Bring Me the Horizon, is I'm now putting the city name even on the camera folders. Because I found with Hollywood Undead, it's like, okay, I might have 30 cities in a row, but now inside of those folders, every single one has the same, Sony A7S II folder. So now I have 30 folders that are the same one.
Yeah. So if you look up Sony A7S II, you're going to have 30 folders that you're still going to have to go through. I get it.
Exactly. So it almost defeats the purpose of the first one. So now I'm like even more detailed with it, where I put the city on, or actually I put the date. I put the date on every single folder. So, the date will be in the name.
Let's talk about moving to Bring Me the Horizon. That's such a huge band. They've had a couple different videographers and photographers out with them. And so I've seen their content, for years. How did you either go in with the idea of the band kind of wants to keep things consistent, or did they, again, give you that freedom to do that creative style?
It was a little bit of both on this time around. Again, this was another opportunity that kind of came out of left field. I didn't have any relationship with the band I never even met them before. I've been to some of their shows.
Which is crazy. That's crazy to me.
I've been to some of their shows. Obviously, have been a fan of their music. And I actually, in November, had seen them in Belgium. Fever was playing with them in Belgium. I was out on another tour. And I ended up going to that show and watching Bring Me. I was like thinking just to myself, like, man, this is such a huge production. And they're new, I love the new music. And, I just kind of thought, man, it'd be sick to make content for these guys. Like, whoever's doing it is really lucky. They have an opportunity to make some really cool shit. And that was that. I didn't meet them that night. I didn't even tell anyone that. And then, come up this year, I just got a phone call from their management, and it came from someone had referred me to the band. They were looking for someone, and my name came up just from a referral. So I took the opportunity, did a couple of weeks with them in the States just to kind of feel it out, because again, we didn't know each other. I'm literally jumping on the road with a band I don't know, and they don't know me. And so I just got out there and immediately was as flexible as possible on the creative side. Like, anything they had in mind, I tried my best to adapt to kind of their style. In the beginning, before I'd even started on day one, I was getting an email from Ollie about, some style preferences he has and some suggestion, but there was never any kind of like demand, like, hey, this is how it has to be done. It was just more so like, hey, if you want to create some stuff that we're going to be stoked on, here are some tips of like what we like. And, shooting with some camcorders, which I thought was kind of hilarious at the time when I read the email. I was like, the hell, I got this badass Blackmagic Ursa. It shoots in 5K, it does raw, it does all this crazy stuff that like any like video nerd would be stoked on, talking about dynamic range and color and all this bullshit.
Right.
And this guy is coming at me saying, hey, why don't you pick up some camcorders before you start tour and let's see what we can make. And instead of trying to like toot my own horn or like put him in a position like, no, I'm the video guy, I just wrote him back and was like, you know what, I'm open to trying some new things. Let's go for it. And so I was on tour with Hollywood Undead at the time. We were going through the UK, and I went ahead in some different little secondhand shops. I mean, $30 here, $20 there, like literally like shit camcorders. And I found this one that's like a 1996 Canon 8mm high 8 tape camera. And,
wow.
I was like, that's the one. Like, I think this is it. Like this, I knew it the second I picked it up. I just felt it. I was like, this is the camera that's going to make the vibe, what they're looking for. So I picked that up, and, we got out to day one, and the best part was like, all right, so I have these cameras. I shot the festival. I flew from the UK. I went on 4 different planes in a row to make it to their show in Jacksonville on time, because any direct flight would have got me there late. So I had to do this crazy travel day, got off the plane, literally ran to their show festival at Welcome to Rockville in Jacksonville. And I'm shooting with these camcorders that I'd never even really turned on. And it brought me back to like high school again, because I'm like, oh my God, these are the same cameras I used to shoot my first videos on. And I'm like shooting one of the biggest bands right now with
in the
these
world.
Fucking cameras.
Like, yeah, holy shit.
It's insane. So I ended up, we got all this footage, hung out with the guys a bit that night. It was all good, and they were eager to see footage, and I'm like, all right, yeah, let me find a way to get this stuff on the computer. Oh, great, this is another obstacle now. So I spent the next 2 days, we were in like North Carolina, of all places, where there's like no video resources. And so I'm like searching on the internet, on Amazon, and all these different places to find, certain cables, and some won't work with the Mac laptop that I have, and it was just kind of a nightmare the first few days until I figured out my system, which really comes down to a $70 cable from Best Buy. So, they've now, the band is very hands-on with their content. Even, if you've been to any of their more recent shows, they have a lot of, Ollie's creating that stuff literally
Wait, they have a lot of what
on his own.
On stage?
Content, like video walls.
Oh, okay.
So there's content flying around on these video walls on every song. And he's very involved with the creation of that stuff. So, I'll finish a video, and I would say I actually have a lot of creative freedom, because I make something and then I show it to them, and then they say yes or no. Really, it really comes down to that. And of course, there'll be some notes here and there, but it'll be slight notes. It'll be like, I don't like that shot of me. Do you have a different one? Or, maybe take that text off and do this instead.
So when it comes to the actual touring logistics, are you like, how many people do they have on their crew? Are you in a band bus? Are you in the production bus? Like, how does that work?
So crew changes from the States to Europe. I guess it's the same. So the crew, there's around 30 people on their crew, including myself. I ride on the band bus. There's a couple other crew buses and whatnot. And I think the only reason really logistically is that the band bus isn't always there at time for load in, things like that, when the crew needs to be there. And in that sense, because I'm working so closely with the band on content every day, it just doesn't make much sense for me to be in a different home, really. So yeah, I'm with them, and we're literally creating stuff, constantly. I typically just set up a little station in the bus. The Europe buses have more room than the US buses, so I kind of prefer the Europe side of touring, because I'm able to find my own table, essentially, and have, like this last run that we did through the UK, I had, I was lucky enough to have a table upstairs where I could set my computer up. I have my cameras charging. I have my own station that I never have to move. It's literally my own little office, in a sense. And, I understand that that's kind of a perk that happens from time to time. And it's not always like that. In the US, because the bus is smaller, I'm the last one to get space, to be honest with you. Like, of course, the band guys are going to get their space first, and that comes with picking a bunk and all that good stuff. So it's like, in the US, I was editing on top of people's backpacks and like suitcases in the back lounge, like while it's moving. I'm like trying to edit a video and have it ready for the next morning. I've created I got a little setup. I got a little way of doing it in my bunk too. So, if I have to, I'll just crawl into my bunk and edit. But yeah, editing on a moving bus has taken a lot of getting used to. I still hate it to this day. Um, you know, anyone would edit faster with a mouse than having to use a trackpad on
True.
your laptop.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, trying to do all the effects and overlays and stuff that I do and try and be very specific with things is a lot harder to do when you're moving and bumping around on a bus. So, yeah, I try and get as much done at the venue as possible.
Right. As far as like color grading and things go, just for like render time alone, are you doing less of that? Are you doing less like adjustment layers, and are you doing less while you're out on the road just because of render time?
No, no, not at all, actually. I don't know if it's luck or what. I typically have render issues here. I have some basic, like, I have some LUTs that I've created. Kind of, I mean, I didn't create them from scratch. I bought some LUTs from like a package, and then I customized them to the way I like. And so those I have like in a folder, and I have like a transitions folder, presets that are like my go-to. So, everything is pretty streamlined with my system, I guess. The only time there's ever a lot of render lag, I get After Effects, which from time to time, it's next to impossible to do it every day. But there'll be some videos where, I did it a lot with Hollywood Undead, actually, where, for example, like, a camera would fly into J-Dog's mouth, and then we're in the dressing room, and like I had to like mask out his mouth, but at the same time I had his fang teeth like extended like vampire fangs, and then the camera spun around and rotated. Like all of that was done in After Effects by creating cameras in After Effects. So that sort of stuff is insane to render. Like that shot that I just spoke about was like a whole day process, really. So it's like, with Bring Me, I'm not really doing any of that stuff because their vibe is much different. They like the lo-fi, VHS look, and the VHS stuff I'm hardly even touching. And also the resolution is like 350 by 540, so it's not even a 1080 image. So rendering those videos is like a blink of an eye, really. And what's cool about the VHS stuff is, I'm doing a lot of rewind and fast forward effect by video. None of it is filters or putting it on the camera while it's capturing to the computer. So I'll hit the rewind button and it'll capture the actual tape rewinding, and then I'm pulling that into the timeline. So
wow,
none of that is. The only thing doing to that footage is I'm bumping the saturation up by like 600% because it's super vivid, and so that's the only thing I'm doing really, is just hitting that saturation to an insane high of 600%.
Yeah, that's insane. So
Yeah.
Let me ask you my favorite question. What is something you know now that you wish you knew when you started making videos?
Oh, man. That's a tough one. I think off the top of my head is not to be so hard on yourself. As far as like, if what you're creating is good or not. I think all of us do that. Like when we're starting out, creating videos, or it could be your first music video or whatever. Of course, you're going to be super critical of your own work, and you're going to think it sucks. And you might have reason to actually know that it's. But I wish I would have just kind of like went with my gut at a lot earlier of an age, rather than like allowing other people to tell me whether or not my stuff was, sufficient. So that's one. Also, like, I guess on a more technical side, like it's more so about, the famous saying is like, it's what you can do with the camera, not with what camera you have. So that's another thing to do. I spent a lot of time, worrying about like, what gear I had and gear I could get my hands on and whatnot. And that kind of slowed me down for a moment, but yeah, I guess that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I mean, the camera thing, like, I think that's super important to touch on. Like, you don't need the most fancy, the most expensive camera. You can literally use like a $30, tape recorder.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what I'm doing now is proof of that. Like, I'm shooting with camcorders literally every day, and it's fun. It's so much fun. I think like jumping in with Bring Me the Horizon has like really brought me back to childhood, really, in a way, like in a creative way. It brought me back to like what I was saying in the beginning of this conversation, like that first music video I ever made was just so fun because there was no pressure. There wasn't like a formula to like what had to be done. And now I'm able to do that again because I'm just kind of seeing what comes out on these cameras, like half the time I can't even see into the viewfinder. I'm just holding the camera up, hoping I capture something, because the show is moving so fast. And it's like, I'll play the footage back at the end of the night and I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even know that happened. Or I can't believe I caught this. Or look at that weird lens flare that happened, or wow, the tape is a piece of shit out. I'm going to use that glitch out because it's cool, so it's like,
yeah,
it's really like brought a whole another side of, creativity, I guess. I always had that with Hollywood Undead as well. It's not to say that wasn't a thing with them. It's just a different capacity now. I think it's always important to try something new, as well, like, and that's kind of what I found as like a interesting thing with joining Bring Me is it's a new vibe, it's a new approach on what I'm already doing, and it's allowing me to kind of like expand on my like style, I guess.
Hey, man. Well, I'm stoked for you. Congratulations on everything you've been doing, and I can't wait to see more of your work in the future. Tell people any final advice and plug your social media.
Yeah, you could find me on Instagram for all your Starbucks updates at Brian_C0X. And I on anything else but Instagram. I guess for advice is just believe in yourself, and you're the only thing that can get in your way, so don't let it happen.
Well, that was the first episode of Season 5 of Project Freelance with Brian Cox. I want to say thank you so much for coming back for another episode. Thank you for listening all the way to the end. If you are listening to me now, that means you've made it to the end of this podcast. Do me a favor, give the podcast a rating if you liked it. 5 stars would be preferred, but whatever you feel is appropriate, and leave a review. Help us grow on the iTunes, the Apple, Spotify, Anchor, Deezer, on the charts. Whatever app you're listening to this on, help us grow on the charts by leaving a review. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You guys are amazing. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I had a blast talking to Brian. I hope I asked insightful questions. I hope that you guys got a lot out of this. I hope you learned a little bit. And I hope that you come back again next week for another episode. Next week, we're going to be talking with Kyle Hewlett, who does digital marketing, among a ton of other things. But he basically gets bands in front of audiences. That is his purpose. And so we'll be talking to him next week. For now, if you guys want to support me, I have a photo book coming out. I have a photography book coming out called No Tracers, an Urban Explorer's Diary. It's a coffee table book. You can check it out at justtheletterk.com/no tracers. The links will be down in the description. If you guys want to pre-order the book, it would mean a lot to me. You'll get a signed copy. You know what's up. You get a signed copy. And it's something I've been working on for 2 years of exploring abandoned buildings and photographing them and compiling them. And then I also added little journal entries into the book so you guys can look at the photos, you can read along, you can enjoy a little bit of urban exploring, and you can go into some of the most amazing abandoned buildings without having to actually step foot out of your house. So I did all the work for you. Now you can check them out. And most of these buildings aren't even there anymore, which is super cool. So it's kind of like having a little piece of history with me. Project Freelance has been mentioned in a blog post from FeedSpot. Thank you guys so much. We are one of the top 15 freelancing podcasts out there on the internet. Hey, I recently learned that there are only about 600,000 podcasts, which I think is absolutely insane, seeing as there's like 500 million YouTube accounts. So, hey, thank you guys for featuring us. Number 5 on their top 15 freelancing podcasts. If you guys want to check that blog out, I will leave a link in the show notes, wherever the show notes are, whether it's below this podcast, next to this podcast, under this podcast, above this podcast. I don't know where they put show notes on the app you're using, but the link will be in the show notes. Thank you guys for featuring us. I appreciate it. Thank you guys. I appreciate you very much. And thank you for listening to another episode of Project Freelance. I will talk to you guys next Monday at 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Tune back in, subscribe so you don't miss a beat, and I will talk to you guys next time. Stay strong, keep enduring, go out and go create something.